Hello everyone. So now the point of this demo would be to show how you can move records from one database to another database regarding of what server it is. And in this case, we are going to be using REST API, specifically the JSONRPC method, which already exists on Odoo, especially now for the enterprise version. So this module would be more applicable for um, Odoo Enterprise, which comes with default JSON RPC. But if you want a customized module that can work with community, then you can make a special request by sending an email to us. So now the first thing to do is to configure your remote servers. So in this scenario, you have to take this server that we are currently using as the server where we want to receive the data. So in a way, we are pulling these records. Okay, we are not pushing it. This is not the source, right? This is the destination where we are currently on. So we want to pull the data from the source via our JSON RPC method. So the first thing is to configure the remote server. And of course, this is an example. So you can give it a name you want. The base URL for the remote server is very, very important. The name of the database. Now, this applies because as I see it, a lot of people that use Odoo in a multi database system. So which is why the database is very, very important for connection. Then next you need the admin and password. Sorry, the username and password um of the admin person on the system. So, for example, I'm logged in as administrator. So the same username and password I used to log in on Odoo, that's the same username and password I need to provide here. Then finally, you can check it active or not active. So this is just to make it such that if it's inactive, then it means none of these operations will be able to run. So now, here what we can see is samples of fetched records. So how does this fetch record comes to be? They come by actually setting parameters for the record you want to fetch. Having fetched those records, you can then personally review them and review the data that comes in before finally pushing the results that you've or pulling the result that you fetched to your local database, which is where you currently are. So now, having put in all these my credentials, I can test the connection to see if it is successful. Okay, so you can see text successful logged in as user ID 2. So which means the setup for the remote server has been completed. So which means this remote server is now reachable. So it's very important to test your connection before trying anything else to avoid any issues, because a lot of the issues that you get is based on wrong connection. So which means if you test your connection properly, you are sure that everything else is going to be much easier. So the first step is usually to fetch the records that you want. For example, here we have a list of contacts. So you can see the model name res.partner, which is technically the model name used for contacts on Odoo. Um, so now I'm going to try a different one. I'm going to try products this time. So by clicking fetch records, I get this wizard where I can then choose what model I want. So I'm going to go for product. All right, I'm going to go for product. And now, one of the things we can also set is the matching field. Now, what does the matching field mean? It means that we need a field to be able to know, oh, is this product already existing on this my current database? Because a lot of times, um, if you're not careful, you can create the same product over and over again. So which means we need to specify a field that has to be the indicator to know if this product already exists. For example, for product, we can use the name as that matching field. So which means if we already have a product with the exact name, the system should tell us that a product with the exact name already exists, so that we can avoid recreating the same product over and over again. So you can call this name. search more. Give me a minute. All right. Product. Mm, mm, mm. Um, right. So we want to use the display name on product as that matching field. So now we can set a domain, so which in a way means a rule for what we want to pull. So if we want to pull, for example, products of only a particular service type, we can say, okay, we want to choose a product where the type, for example, where the product type is equals to goods, or if it's only services, or if it's a combination, that kind of thing, we can set that. So for an example here, and I'm going to set product type equals to goods. So which means only product type that are goods are going to be pulled in. Now I can set a limit on the amount of data I want to pull per time. So sometimes if you're having performance issues, or you know your database or your servers are not strong enough to pull in a lot of data at a time, you can limit the data you want per time. So for example, I'm only going to request for 200 of those products to be pulled from the remote um, database. Offset pretty much means if you want to pull it in terms of pagination, you can use that. So now here, this is very, very important. You get to choose the fields that you want to pull on the products. So not all, you might not need all the fields. Most times you will need all the information on a particular product from the remote side to be pulled to the new side. So which means you want particular attributes or particular fields to be included. So for example, we can include something like name. We can include something like the image, for example. Those kind of things, we can include them and send them over, like the quantities also, the price. So I'm going to add price. I'm going to add name. Mm. So some of these fields, it's very, very easy to know that some of these fields are not needed. How you know that is, if fields that are read only, it means most of the time they are computed. So which means computed fields don't need to be pulled from database to database, because the other database is going to um, fill in those blanks based on the compute method by itself. So you need to make sure that you are choosing the right fields, which is why we don't do this automatically. We don't just automatically send everything, because it can be problematic to send the wrong fields. Some fields cannot be migrated, and that is the truth, because they are not meant to be, they are computed. So if you try and move a computed field, then you might be having some issues. Then you need to check and make sure that the fields you are moving are fields that can be moved. So things like color, even company ID if you wanted to, but in this case, if the other side doesn't have the same company configuration, then you might be having an issue. So it's very important that you personally pick out the fields that you are sending. So that is it. Things like default code, description, those are things that yes, you need to send over. So having selected this, I can then um, fetch, try to fetch those products now. Okay, now we can see the products that are being searched. You can see 200 based on the limit we set, don't forget. So we can see the products that we just pretty much searched for. We can even open them up to see the raw data. Of course, this data has not yet been put into the system, but this is just the data that's been pulled. So now the next part, of course, will be to push it to local. But this is the data that is going to be sent in: the barcode, the category, the default code, the description, based on the fields that we chose, right? So now there are two ways we can go about this. We can go individually and push them to local, like we can see here. So if we decided to go through each product ourselves, we can push each individual record that we fetched. We can do it individually, but then we can also do it as a whole. So which means we can go to server one now, right? And we can see, although this is from the old one there before, we can see this is the one for the the one that we just found, right? For the product, the one that has not yet been pushed yet. So when it has been pushed, you will see that there will be a local model name attached, and also the local ID for the record on this current database that you've pulled it to. So like if we look at the ones that we cited from before, the contacts, right, we can see that we saw their ID, right, their respective ID currently on this database haven't been pushed, and you can see that they are set as matched. So which means that we've been able to, pull this all this data that has been checked, they've been pulled. So but you can see that for the products, they've not been pushed yet. So which means now we can try and push the products. But just to show you for the contacts now, you can see these contacts that were brought here. If we go to the contact menu, you can see that those same contacts were created. Those same contacts that we saw before, all of them were created here. So now we will do the same thing for products now by trying to push the fetched products to our current local server products, which are these 200 of them, into our current local database. So I'm going to click on push fetched, and that is going to run every single product. And now it's going to take a little bit of like a few seconds. I mean, in this case we're only dealing with 200, but if you are dealing with thousands or more, it might take a little bit more time, although the timeout of your database is also a factor here. So we can see that the push has finished, 200 records has been pushed. So if I go and I search my products now, products inventory, right, and I go to my products, should be able to see all these new products that we pulled in. So we can see the abdominal pelvic scan and all of these other products, the syringe, you can see the prices, all those fields specifically that we chose were able to be pulled in, and they come in perfectly, and that is that. So with this, I would say this is how the migration process works. It's pretty smooth, and makes it easy to deal with, especially in cases where you don't have direct access to the database. Like of course in the case of Odoo SH, or where you are using a shared hosting, you might not get direct access to the database. So this can be a very, very good way of doing it. This module was made as a very, very effective alternative to the Odoo database migration, which connects directly with Postgres. So just a few things to note: the connection has to be very, very good. Also, like I said earlier, the fields that you choose to send has to be fields that can be sent, because there are some fields that are protected by Odoo, and also some fields are computed fields. So which means if you are trying to pull in data from those fields, you are going to be getting some issues with that. So which means you need to know the right fields to pull in, fields that are gettable, and once you go via those guidelines, then you will not have any issues. So that is all for this video. Thank you all for listening.